Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. Happy Friday, everybody. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It's a great day to be great, and it's a great day to break down some goodness from Thursday Night Football. We're back. Electric game last night. Also going through all the fantasy relevant injuries you need to know about ahead of the weekend, and we'll have some bull calls for you guys at the end of the show. So by us, I mean myself, and of course, Fantasy Life's finest, Dwain, The Rock McFarland. Dwain, what a way to get the football season back underway, man.
Man, well, nothing like a competitive game, number one. Obviously, we thought we would get that with the Ravens and with the Chiefs, but also getting that unveil of something like Isaiah Likely in week one. That is always fun. Like, we've heard the chatter this offseason that, hey, Ravens could be using more 12 personnel. We know it was something that Todd Monken had done in the past. I mean, we've talked a little bit about it, but we've also heard that in the past from that team. And these things don't always come to fruition. So it was really interesting to see, like, you know, we're actually going to do it, guys. We really are going to do it. I know deciphering those tea leaves can be tough, but yeah, Isaiah Likely looking really great, Ian.
Yeah, it's like that, seeing Ricky Bobby where he actually breaks Ricky's arm. It's like, oh, they actually did it this year. Like, they're using the 12 personnel. Didn't exactly expect that to fully happen. But again, plenty of notes on that. If you guys missed it, which, you guys missed a good one. Chiefs did take down the Ravens 27-20. Patrick Mahomes, 291 yards through the air and a touchdown. Lamar Jackson, freaking 395 total yards and a touchdown. Unfortunately, though, Dwain just couldn't quite get that pesky second touchdown when it mattered most. Missed an open Isaiah Likely, missed a wide open Zay Flowers, and then on the last play of the game from 10 yards out, found Likely in the back of the end zone, but he was a toe away from being down in bounds. Wear white cleats, bro. Maybe we could have actually seen him, get that call in that case. So again, can't say enough good things about the game, except for, Justin Tucker missed another 50-yard field goal. Did anyone mention that yesterday? Funny how that works out, Dwain. But in all seriousness, guys, let's break down some of the biggest fantasy implications from, again, an eventful Thursday night football affair. First up, Dwain, for bag drafters of Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice, which I know you and I are a part of, feeling pretty good after that performance. Rashee Rice, 7 catches, 103 yards. Xavier Worthy, 68 total yards and 2 touchdowns. So first of all, man, Xavier Worthy, what a coming out party. That said, is it sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Worthy, I think it's only the tip of the iceberg. I know last night was kind of a weird performance, Ian. Like, he was out there plenty. Like, his route participation was the same as Rashee Rice. They were both in the high 70% range, and he wasn't targeted as much. And the one target, that we saw down the sideline later in the game, we know was a blown coverage. Obviously, he didn't even really have to use all that speed that he has, but he was quickly gone to score a touchdown. And we did see another pass that he caught over the middle. He accelerates, shows some of that speed. So, I mean, I think we saw flashes of things, but he didn't have a huge target share. And we're going to get Marquise Brown back. So there is a lot of competition that he's going to have to deal with. But I think the big positive, Ian, is that we're getting him out there plenty. And we saw guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, Justin Watson, Sky Moore getting snaps. I think a lot of those go away once Hollywood Brown is back. So I think the offense really will center around Juju Smith-Schuster and Travis Kelce in the intermediate and center part of the field. And then I think on the outsides, down the field, also like Patrick Mahomes talked about in pregame, hey, we're probably overrating all of this deep speed we have. It's a lot more about the horizontal speed that we can get into play as well, and the space that creates for other guys. So I think that all of these guys are going to be viable. Ian, if you drafted Rashee Rice, congratulations, man, because I do think if you drafted today, he would be going at the end of round 2, maybe the middle of round 2. I did happen to see a couple of high stakes drafts. We're talking $2,000 plus drafts. I saw Rashee Rice going towards the middle of round 2. I think you could argue for Rashee Rice all the way up to basically right at the beginning of round 2 in fantasy drafts. I think, like, if you wanted to sit there and go receiver by receiver by receiver and say, would I rather have Rashee Rice or would I rather have this other player? I think basically, like, Puka Nacua, you're still taking. Marvin Harrison Jr., you're still taking over him. But after that, then you get into this kind of flat tier of wide receivers. I think you could talk yourself into him all the way to the top of that. So, yeah, Rashee Rice, I think he is a low-end wide receiver 1. The rest of the way, I think Xavier Worthy is going to be a boom-bust wide receiver 3. But, man, I think he's going to have some absolute huge weeks. He could still be a wide receiver 2 this season.
I'm not going to let you ignore the obvious question here, Dwain. Rashee Rice or Malik Neighbors the rest of the way? Again, luckily for a lot of our fantasy teams, we sort of have both, but
yeah, we got both. I think it's Rashee Rice. Yeah, I mean, it's just look, he's with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah,
he's got Patrick Mahomes. The other guy has Daniel Jones. So I mean, sorry, Malik, still love you, bro.
When you put it that way, Dwayne, it does seem quite obvious. But again, you mentioned it.
Yeah, 33% target share, like from Patrick Mahomes. Like that's going to be really good things, guys. That's going to be real. I mean, Rashee Rice could be a top 6 wide receiver in fantasy this year. Like that's on the table.
77% route rates for both Rice and Worthy out there. We did see some juju on third downs, which was kind of weird. Arguably dropped a 12-yard touchdown early. So, yeah, Marquise Brown, get better soon. Luckily, NFL Network's Ian Rappaport did say Hollywood could be back as early as week 2. So, fun game. And then a wild stat from Doug Clawson on Twitter. That touchdown to Xavier Worthy was only Mahomes' 3rd touchdown pass, traveling 20-plus air yards since Tyreek Hill was traded. So, again, as Dwayne said, complete blown coverage, not trying to sit here and, overly talk about Worthy, getting behind the secondary or anything. But yeah, it is a part of the defense. And accordingly, guys, Mahomes, 10.4 yards per attempt last night. That's the highest in the game versus the Ravens over these past 2 years. Now, Dwayne, the other big part has to be, talking about what went on with these tight ends. Isaiah Likely and Noah Gray unironically both outproduced Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce. Isaiah Likely in a major way, 9 catches, a career high 111 yards, and a touchdown. And again, just one single toe away from having a second score. So at this point, Dwayne, are you panicking? Is Mark Andrews ever going to catch another pass? Are we just dropping him? Isaiah Likely, tight end 1? What are we feeling?
Well, look, I mean, this is not good news for Mark Andrews. I think you've got to look at it and say, okay, number one, like this is gonna eat into his playing time. We saw it last night. He still had the highest route participation of the 2 players, 72% for Andrews, 69% for Likely. Again, we talked about them using more of the 2 tight end sets. 54% of the time they use 2 tight ends. Like that's a really high mark, guys, for using the 2 tight ends. So they were also using that, Ian, whenever they were throwing the football. So when they were in 12 personnel, they're getting Justice Hill on the field. Now some of this is just they're trailing, right? They're trailing in the game. This is the personnel they're running out there. But I think it's a positive overall for Likely in a big way. But with Andrews, we have to bring him down because he's going to lose some playing time. And then this is another player that's now going to be earning targets. We knew that Zay Flowers was going to do his thing and that he'd probably be like 22-25% of the targets. But now if we're also going to have Isaiah Likely in the mix, we now have 3 guys fighting for these passing yards. And let's look, this isn't, I'm not going to go down this street of like jumping all over Lamar Jackson, but like, he's going to have to prove more. Like, can he really support can he really throw for enough yards per game to support all 3 of these guys? And I think that's at least a question. Like, you can sit here and get mad and be like, oh, Lamar can do it all. Yeah, he does show he can do it some games, but there's other games where he doesn't, Ian. And last night he missed quite a few big throws. If he makes those throws, though, we feel a lot better about saying that he can support these guys, right? I mean, you had the high pass to Likely. Obviously, that was nearly a great catch. That's not on Lamar, but he missed Zay Flowers wide open in the middle of the end zone, which would have been a touchdown as well. So when I look at it, I've moved Mark Andrews down below right around George Kittle in the rest of season ranks. And then whenever you look at Isaiah Likely, I have moved him up in that same range with David Njoku and Jake Ferguson. So I think you're going to have a hard time having Likely outside of your top 12. But I have to say, Ian, I saw a draft last night that was a high stakes draft. Now, this was tight end premium, but Likely went in round 2. Like, in my opinion, now that's getting too rich. Like, I'm not taking Likely over Malik Neighbors. I'm not taking Likely, even if we get to like the tight end stuff, I'm not taking him over Trey McBride. I'm not taking him over Dalton Kincaid. I like him, but again, this was a trailing game script. When they went to 21 personnel and some of their other formations, Likely wasn't on the field. So I think we could still see games where his route participation is more like 50%, Andrews is more like 75%, and he's not always going to get a 30% target share. As much as we like the guy, he looked great with the ball in his hands. I think if people really want to steam him up into like the top 4 or 5 tight ends, that's really out of control.
Just had a 0.3% touchdown probability on that amazing 49-yard score. And guess what? Really good football players will make really good plays like that. But again, wouldn't just throw out everything we've seen from this Ravens offense over these past 3 years in favor of, again, a 60-minute week 1 sample. Mark Andrews still very much good at football. And yeah, Dwayne, I'm with you. I do think Isaiah Likely deserves to be right there in that top 12 conversation. But yeah, let's not overreact to everyone, because last year, this time, Isaiah Likely had 1 catch for for 4 scoreless yards with Mark Andrews not even on the field in week 1. And guess what? He ended up having a much better end of the season when Andrews was out as well. So a strong data point nevertheless, but again, just one single data point. So we'll see what keeps on keeping on. But Dwain, it does seem like Zay Flowers is pretty well ingrained as that wide receiver 1. Had 10 targets out there, but really with all the penalties was 14. Just to be a little bit cooler if they weren't all so gadgety and attached to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and we saw this last year around Zay Flowers. And what's interesting is whenever you watch the film on Zay Flowers, whether you're going back to college or just watching him, in these games, like, he's capable of so much more. Like, when you watch him, he can shake defenders. He can get open. He can beat press coverage. Like, he's not the perfect wide receiver, but I think that he has so much more to his game. So I'm hoping that this offense really evolves. Now, I thought the offense looked better in the second half last night. Part of that was getting away from just trying to get Zay Flowers all these behind the line of scrimmage looks. Those are great. They will pad the stats for us, Ian. But we'd like a little bit more of his diet to come down the field. And we saw him do this. He actually got behind the defense on what might have been a touchdown from a better ball from Lamar down the right sideline. We also had, the pass interference call where Lamar basically, underthrew him intentionally so Flowers could come back to the ball, and then the defender, grab Flowers. So there's a chance that turns into a catch as well. I do think this guy has the ability, Ian, to work further down the field, but it's a concern right now because despite a 25% target share, he had a 0.77 yards per route run last night. Guys, a good number for a wide receiver is 2. An elite number is like 2.5 to 3. So he was way, way below that. And a lot of that comes to how he's getting used. Only 20% of the air yards, despite having a 25% target share. So again, I think the player has the skill set to do more. I wonder if the big question here, Ian, is the Ravens' offensive line. And you've rightfully questioned it all through the preseason. You've talked about the 3 new starters. Did not look very good, especially in the first half last night. And maybe that was part of it. Maybe they wanted to use more of the quick game, just get the ball out of Lamar's hands to try and avoid negative plays. And maybe as that offensive line gels, they can take some more shots down the field.
We'll give them a little bit of slack. This is a Chiefs defense that has not given up 30-plus points in a game since Week 18 of the 2022 season. Obviously, saw Trent McDuffie and plenty of other guys making plays in the secondary. Chris Jones at the line of scrimmage. So, again, don't think it's going to be as tough going for the Ravens, passing game here moving forward, but all good points regardless. So, Zay Flowers did get those 2 rush attempts as well. As much as we would love to see some more air yards there, Dwain, at least the Ravens are being very clear about featuring him as their number 1 wide receiver because, yeah, he certainly is the best one they got. Final notes here, and I don't think we have to dive into it quite as much because not seeing people freak out over the Chiefs tight ends the exact same way, Dwain, even though Noah Gray with 37 yards did actually outproduce Travis Kelce there with 34. So Kelce was still making an impact, had a really good lead block on that Xavier-worthy reverse touchdowns. But yeah, man, last year we did see Kelce at 65 receiving yards per game, have his lowest mark since 2015 before things really started taking off in the playoffs. So any level of concern on Travis Kelce because he was still out there in his usual full-time role.
No, he has the same concerns we had in the preseason, which was it's just a more crowded room. I'm not worried about the Noah Gray thing. Only a 37% route participation for Noah Gray. We're not seeing the same thing that we're seeing with Isaiah Likely, right? Him coming out and taking reps. Travis Kelce actually still led the team in route participation with 87%, which is absolutely astronomical, guys, for a tight end. If you get to 80%, you're typically a tight end 1. If you're up towards 90%, you're in rare company. We might get one tight end that even gets close to that in the entire season. So Kelce's still out there, still going to do his thing. And also, guys, just remember, tight ends, like you're playing against linebackers, you're playing against safeties, playing against a lot of zone coverage. It's just really, a lot of it is about you just being in complete sync with your quarterback. And I think we're still going to get that. The difference is Rashee Rice, year 2 now, Ian. We saw him go out and earn his target. They want to get him involved. And then we also know that Hollywood Brown will be back. So it's just a crowded room.
Now let's talk about some running back usage because we had 2 pretty freaking big epiphanies come out of this. Well, first being Isaiah Pacheco looks a lot like a workhorse RB1 joint. I know a lot of people were quick to write that obituary after Carson Steele had a good preseason and after the Chiefs brought in Samaje Perine. But yeah, turns out Pacheco, the same guy who's helped lead the Chiefs to back-to-back Super Bowls. Let me rephrase. Was the RB1 for back-to-back Super Bowls. Didn't necessarily lead them to those Super Bowls. But yeah, Dwain, regardless, pretty good usage in week 1.
Yeah, and Pacheco is just one of these things, Ian, where whatever your take was when the Samaje Perine thing went down, people are just sticking with it, right? People, oh, it's just game one for Perine, guys. What do we expect? He's still going to take this work away in like week 2 or week 3. And then for the Pacheco truthers, like, we told you, Perine's nothing to worry about. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, as they like to say, Mr. Hartitz. But yeah, week 1, it doesn't get better than this, Ian. 80% of the snaps for Mr. Pacheco, 79% of the rushing attempts, 73% route participation. Now, Samaje Perine did get on the field when in long down and distance situations on third down when you're facing what? A blitz, most likely, and he's good at picking up the blitz. So you saw Perine get that work, 63% of those third down snaps versus 38% for Pacheco. I think the one thing we've got to keep an eye on, Ian, is if for some reason Samaje Perine's role expanded into the 2-minute offense. Last night, we didn't get to see the 2-minute offense from the Chiefs. They started, though, to do it on the 5th drive, which was the last drive of the first half, and Pacheco was the player that was on the field. So we're going to give him that one snap and assume that right now, a very small sample, guys, but right now it looks like Pacheco still has the 2-minute offense work. We'll see if he can hang on to it. Regardless, Ian, look, he has a lot of room to give up right there. I mean, I just mentioned snaps 80%. Like if he's at 65%, that's still going to be really good in a Chiefs offense. So he's got a little bit of leeway here for Samaje Perine to take over a little bit more of this work and still be a very relevant back in fantasy. But right now, locked into the running back 1 conversation, certainly.
Would have been a lot cooler if he did catch that wheel route down the sideline that could have added 20 yards. But otherwise, man, look good out there. And to be fair, had the safety coming over the top. Wasn't exactly a gimme, with any running back downfield. But 78 total yards and a short touchdown. And 40 of his 45 rushing yards came after contact. Had a really big first down rush there at the end of the game where he managed to stay on top of some bodies. And yeah, generally looked like the sort of guy that should be leading an offense, as Dwain said, locked in RB1 for the time being. Now in Baltimore, Dwain, it looked like after the Ravens marched right down the field and got Derrick Henry that short rushing touchdown that we were going to be sitting here going, yeah, Derrick Henry, he's going to score 45 touchdowns this year. Why did we ever have any concern? However, over the next, 55 or so minutes, we did see some of the concerning factors come into play, namely Justice Hill taking a lot of that pass down work.
Yeah, we talked about the big unveil we thought we would be seeing with the Ravens, and I was really excited to see how they would handle it, was using Derrick Henry more after what happened to them in the playoff game when they went so pass heavy last year against the Chiefs, and we just didn't see that. Early in the game, they attempted to do it a little bit, but once they got behind, they just went away from it, Ian. And so what it looks like is we still really have the same Derrick Henry we've always had as far as being very, very game script dependent. I mean, we've been talking about this for like 5 years now, and games where, you're playing with a lead, Derrick Henry's going to be amazing for you. And he probably still is. This Ravens offensive line is going to get better. You guys saw what Lamar Jackson's out there doing. Defenses are going to be worried about that. So there's going to be teams that aren't going to be able to stuff Derrick Henry early in the game and then build that lead and take it away from the Ravens. I would say maybe as soon as next week when they play the Raiders. So I wouldn't be too worried about it, but it did show us, Ian, that on passing downs, they're fully going to Justice Hill. 51% snap share for Justice Hill right now, and that all comes down to the game script. So anytime you have a player like Derrick Henry, they could probably ebb and flow anywhere from like 70 to 60% of the snaps down to being below 50%. That is concerning. So you're gonna have to be in games where the Ravens don't trail that often. Here's the good news. They're a good team, guys, and they're not going to play the Chiefs every single week. So I think you're still going to be fine on Derrick Henry, but when games go into this sort of a mode, we are going to see more Justice Hill.
Honestly, pretty similar uses to what we saw in Tennessee last year with Tajay Spears being the primary pass down back. And again, that didn't necessarily stop Henry from racking up a lot of yards and touchdowns and rush attempts in games that they weren't actively trailing by multiple scores and for portions of it. So again, better days should be ahead for Derrick Henry. I was interested to see, Dwain, how they would kind of balance out the under center versus shotgun run frequency. And by the end of the game, just 2 carries from shotgun for 70 yards, 7 for 18 under center, 4 for 21 in pistol. So I do wonder if maybe the Ravens start leaning on that little, different formation a bit more often there. So yeah, final note would just be that Justice Hill could have had a receiving touchdown on the total. Really nice play by the Chiefs defensive lineman on a QB spot to get that hand up at the last second. So again, game of inches as the Ravens found out, but for tonight, the Chiefs are still champions, and they still got that NFL lineal championship belt if we wanted to decide to put it up every single week like a championship fight. An idea that, again, no one else seems to like but me, but hey, that's life in the big city. Guys, before we get on to some injury report goodness, want to go through a few quick news headlines from yesterday, and specifically mostly just about running back rooms. We actually had Chargers OC Greg Roman be the latest offensive coordinator to go out there and say that yes, they are expected to go ahead and feed the hot hand between Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, which was a similar sentiment as Buccaneers OC Liam Cohen saying it's Rashad's show, and Bucky and Sean are going to get a lot of work and hopefully be efficient and do a great job when they're in there. So again, leaning Rashad White there, but we should still see some of the other backs. Meanwhile, Giants head coach Brian Daboll said a lot of really good things about Devin Singletary, leading to ESPN's Jordan Renan saying that, hey, attention fantasy owners, Singletary is going to have prime usage. Wouldn't be surprised to see him take more than 80% of the Giants snaps, which is a lot. And we do see beat reporters say, sort of kind of exaggerated hyperbole-esque numbers. But that said, guys, Buccaneers and the Giants were the two teams last year to give their RB1 the most games with at least 80% of the snaps. So no, Singletary is not Saquon Barkley, but you know what? Being paid to be the RB1 in New York nevertheless. And finally, this is one of those weird kind of coach speak situations, Dwayne, where we had Antonio Pierce for the Raiders say that you really want to see Zamir from carry 15 to 20, 25. And then I guess on the same day, we had offensive coordinator Luke Getsy say, yeah, he's the lead guy, but not necessarily like the years of the bell cow, 25, 30 carries a game. We got 17 games out there. So kind of like a choose your fighter in terms of coach speak. And I'm sure people will treat that rationally, and no, they're just going to follow whoever their preconceived notions already had. So just some more running back news that, again, we'll be happy to finally have some rock solid utilization for very, very soon. So let's move on to some injuries, guys. But first, a quick word to our friends over at Experian. Experian is to your finances what FantasyLife is to your fantasy league. It is a tool and resource designed to make your life easier, and the Experian app is free to download and serves as a one-stop shop for managing your financial health. With so many spending and subscription details to track, let Experian handle it for you. They'll help you find and cancel your unwanted or forgotten subscriptions, helping you save money and focus on what really matters. That's right, winning your fantasy league. Download the Experian app today. Do note that results will vary. Not all subs are eligible. Savings not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account required. You should see Experian.com for details. But yeah, shout out Experian. Dwayne, it's Friday, which means it's injury report day. Now, teams are not going to be releasing their official final designations until later this afternoon, so make sure you guys all keep an eye on that. But over the course of the next 20 or so minutes, Dwayne and I going to go through everyone that's been on the injury report that is fantasy relevant and let you know, again, more so the handful of guys need to keep an eye on, because as we can usually parse together with some of the full practices and, just history of teams, not every situation needs to be a complete, panic street arrival. So kicking things off at quarterback, Dwayne, this is a fairly new one because Russell Wilson apparently re-aggravated the same calf injury that was bothering him throughout August. Didn't exactly get, the full details in terms of how tight it did get. Mike Tomlin did say there's no long-term concerns about Russ's calf, but Ian Rappaport is reporting that it's fair to say we don't know if he's going to be out there given how cautious the Steelers staff has reportedly been. So Russell Wilson, Dwayne, didn't exactly like him last year, and I think we're going to like him a hell of a lot less if he is going to be hobbled out there. I mean, my God, we saw what an injured calf did to Joe Burrow during the early parts of last season.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, this is the same scenario we went through with Joe Burrow last year. He injured it early in the preseason, kind of worked his way back, got out there, and then re-injured it in week one. So this is slightly before week one. Not ideal. Weren't very excited about this passing game period. And now to have Russell Wilson, with this issue, here's what I'll say. I do think with Justin Fields under center, it's the best for fantasy, Ian, because we've seen that Justin Fields is willing to at least just lock onto one guy and go with it. And I think if you're locking onto one player in Pittsburgh, who is it? It's George Pickens. Okay, so if he's going to be willing to lock on, and maybe we only get 200 passing yards per game, but if most of it goes to Pickens, it's going to be fine. Whereas I think Russ is much more willing to drop back and kind of try to read the defense. I also think that Justin Fields, while he's not the most accurate passer, he might be better for the intermediate and short game, right? We've just seen that from Russ. He's not great at that part of the game. And I don't know if it's the height issue, if it's an arm strength issue, or it's just, Russ's comfort level with how he likes to operate an offense. I think that could be a plus as well for Pickens. Now, this is not ideal, Ian, if we have Justin Fields out there for Najee Harris, nor for Jaylen Warren, because we're going to have Fields, number one, stealing rushing attempts. We know it's going to be a run-heavy offense, so there's still going to be carries to go around, but Fields is going to steal some of those design rushing attempts. And guess what? He is not going to check the ball down to these guys. He is going to make his one read to Pickens that we talked about, and then he's taking off. He's running. He's not throwing the ball to Jaylen Warren. He's not going to throw the ball to Najee Harris. They'll get some targets, but it's going to go down versus what we would have expected if we had Russ Wilson under center. So I think some guys kind of get a little bit of it would be fine for them, like Pickens. Some of the other guys, it's more of a downgrade for them. But if Fields is under center, I mean, look, he's a top 15 fantasy quarterback, and he's on a lot of waiver wires. So if you're staring down the barrel of Dak Prescott against, the Cleveland Browns this week, which we're fading, and you have room to go pick up, Justin Fields, and you can just start him for the week. Like, I would do it. Like, I would start him. Like, Justin Fields is going to come out here. It may not be pretty, Ian, but he has a really good chance to give you 20 fantasy points.
I think that is about the line. I'm looking at our consensus ranks right now. I have Dak Prescott QB 16. Dwain has him 17. The rest of our rankers are right around that same area. Right above him, though, Dwain, we do have Matthew Stafford, Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff, Tua Tagovailoa. Guys that aren't as fancy-friendly archetypes as Justin Fields. Again, we always want that rushing upside, but they are in pretty, again, what we think to be on paper, solid matchups right now. So is it kind of that QB 16 spot for Fields, or do we say, hey, this is the same guy averaging the fifth most fantasy points per game at the position over these last 2 years, squeeze him in the lineup?
Well, if one of those other players is your QB1 and you don't have a quarterback 2, then carrying a guy like Fields would be nice anyway. I think it's a coin flip to your point on whether you're starting him over them, because Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford are going to be in a potential shootout. They're going to be fine, right? And then you've got, Trevor Lawrence, and we've got Tua. It's funny, like we have this kind of round robin of all these guys facing each other in potential shootout games, and we like all of them. If you just had to say, though, like, which guy is going to give me the best floor, it still might be Fields, because we know what he's going to do from a rushing perspective. So, look, if someone wants to pick him up and start him over those guys, I think it's fine. But I think that is the tier for Justin Fields. I will also say this, Ian. I don't know if it'll last for him. We'll see. Because Justin Fields, the one challenge. And the reason I'm saying this is because if you have to use Fab to pick up Justin Fields, I would be careful. Because he does things that are going to drive Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith crazy. He fumbles the ball. He holds on to the ball too long. It's fine to hold on to the ball if you understand how to manage a pocket and you can feel that pressure and you can step up and make the big throws. We haven't seen that yet from Fields. Yeah. Those things have actually led, exactly. Pretty shaky. Those things have led to sack strip fumbles, the end drives, or sacks. Those are drive killers. When you get sacked, man, your drive is pretty much over. So I think those are the things to remember. I wouldn't go overboard in how much I'm going to put my chips on Fields, because I could easily see this being like a 3-week injury for Russ. And then as soon as he's back, them going to him. Now, if Fields shines in those 3 games, and there's a chance, like, I get it. Like, he could be a QB1 in fantasy this season. I would just be a little bit careful. I wouldn't go all in on Fields, I guess, is my main point.
For the record, Steelers wide receiver Van Jefferson said that he had no idea Russ was even limited out there. So I think, again, the final designation and what happens in practice on Friday will tell us a lot about Sunday. But yeah, obviously not ideal for the Steelers at their starting quarterback, already dealing with an injury that they hope was in the past. No other really big quarterback injuries to talk about. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, both practicing in full all week, fully expected to go. So yeah, let's go ahead and move on to running backs, everybody. Starting off with Dwain, Football Friday night. It's super catchy on my news channel. Usually high school football, but this time we got the Packers and the Eagles going on. So Marshawn Lloyd, hamstring questionable. Emmanuel Wilson is also questionable with a hip injury after both ended the week with back-to-back limited practices. So sure, looking like Josh Jacobs' workhorse RB1 season, Dwain. I mean, him and, look, honestly, similar situation to Joe Mixon, where it's like we love the offense, we're expecting the workhorse role. I think he'd be pretty hard-pressed to show me a fantasy lineup where Josh Jacobs should not be starting in it.
Yeah. This is good news for Jacobs with both of these guys dinged up. We've talked about it. this is a coaching staff that really likes to rotate their guys, but they don't have anybody to rotate in right now. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I'm actually going to move Josh Jacobs up in the projections and the ranks this morning now that we've got a little bit more news here. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on what the injury reports look like today, and you guys will be able to see those things. I'll be updating projections as I get the news throughout the day. I'll be updating them tomorrow as well, and also the rankings. You can check across all the Fantasy Life staff. But, yeah, when we're looking at Josh Jacobs this weekend, in for a really big workload, Ian.
Right now, we both have him RB14. I'm also going to be bumping him up. I think when we're looking at, Kyron Williams and Travis Etienne right there at the edge of the top 10, that does seem like where we should be having Josh Jacobs going. So excited to watch that one. And again, we'll see what happens in a fun Brazil-themed affair between, again, the Packers and Eagles. Dwain, and, not great news, I will say. I don't love it, but it's not the biggest surprise. We do have 49ers running back Christian McCaffrey still on the injury report, practicing on limited fashion with a calf/Achilles injury. Now, this is not a new issue. They asked Kyle Shanahan about it, and he said it's just part of the calf injury he sustained in training camp. And we had a couple teams, kind of be forced to update their injury reports after getting a little nudge from the league office after Wednesday. So we did get Ian Rappaport saying that he should be fine to play week 1. But man, Dwain, just the fact CMC is already dealing with this, pretty good sign that if you have the bench space, go ahead and try to find a way to get Jordan Mason on those fantasy squads.
Yeah, if Jordan Mason is available and you have Christian McCaffrey, this is the kind of handcuff that you definitely want. I know sometimes people talk about with handcuffs, do you want them? Do you not want them? And a lot of it comes down to what you pay for them in the draft. But he's sitting there as a free agent, and he is the lead back right now for the 49ers if something happens to Christian McCaffrey. And so you're going to want to be in on that player. So I'm with you, Ian. You invested a lot in Christian McCaffrey because he's a great player, but he also plays in a great offense that's going to put up some running back points no matter what. So you want to make sure that you go get Jordan Mason on your roster. If you are drafting this weekend, we have talked all along about CeeDee Lamb being the safest player in fantasy football. A little of that edge got taken away because CeeDee held out so long, Ian. But right now, if you're drafting this weekend, you're in a full PPR. You taking CMC or you taking CeeDee Lamb, sir?
I think CeeDee, man, no concerns anymore. And as we said, difference between being injury prone and being actively injured. And unfortunately, even if it's not the most serious thing, CMC is the latter right now.
Yep, I'm going with CD as well. I mean, it is a guy that just went for 1,700 passing yards. So we know what CMC can do. But, I mean, if there is a wide receiver you're willing to take over him, it is CeeDee Lamb.
Other big running back news, Steelers RB Jaylen Warren got up to a full practice on Thursday with that hamstring injury. Mike Tomlin's been saying throughout the week that he is expecting him to be ready to go, and now we are as well. So good to see him out full, Dwain, even if maybe in the first game back could be eased a bit back into action. Honestly, now the biggest ramification for Warren might just be who he has under center, because you mentioned it before, difference between Russ and Fields these last 2 seasons has been night and day. Look, Broncos offense these last 2 years, 26 in points scored. The Bears were 19th. Neither of them were good, yet the Broncos were 3rd and 4th in running back expected fantasy points per game, while the Bears were 28th and 29th. I mean, we really do have a huge check down merchant at this point of his career in Russell Wilson. That's going to Jaylen Warren. Meanwhile, Fields is the one, to your previous point, that is scrambling and not checking down. I mean, between Najee and Jaylen, Dwain, I think Jaylen Warren for sure loses out more if Fields is going to end up being under center.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It could still be kind of like an even split between the two of them, but it's not ideal, Ian. So I'm keeping Jaylen Warren further down the ranks. I will say, if he practices in full today, there's a chance he just comes off the injury report and he's not listed on it at all. And so that would be a positive. So there is a chance that like maybe you drafted Jaylen Warren as your running back 2 because maybe you went with more of a 0 running back build. You went heavy after those wide receivers, and you might be looking at him versus some other names, Ian, like J.K. Dobbins, maybe you've got Jaleel McLaughlin. Like, I think that's the range where I'm probably still going to go ahead and start Jaylen Warren. But like, if you have another name that's better than those guys, like I'm going to put Jaylen Warren on my bench. I'm not going to risk it this weekend, especially if Justin Fields is out there. So, there's always context with these things. You can't just we can't just say straight out tell you Jaylen Warren's got to be on your bench. But if you go look at our ranks, you will see like, the way Ian and I both, I think, really work through ranks, like it's not just straight projections. We really kind of try to think through, would we start this guy over this guy? And that's kind of how the list really ends up shaping up. And so you'll see the range where you're going to see Jaylen Warren clustered with a lot of other backs that honestly are probably lower than what you would expect. So that's essentially telling you to bench him unless you get down to those names. And then you're probably just going to go ahead and stick with Jaylen Warren.
And yeah, Dwayne, I will say, as I was going through setting my, 38 fantasy lineups yesterday, had to go change a few of the ranks a couple times because, again, once you are actually pressed with that decision, obviously, again, I think brings out the best in what you're actively trying to figure out, regardless of the position. So, only other running back news: Miles Sanders got up to a full practice with that finger injury. Should still be the Chuba Hubbard show, but Miles is expecting to be out there. Antonio Gibson got added to the injury report on Thursday. Not that we were overly expecting him to, be a standalone option, but not ideal for the Patriots handcuff. And then Roschon Johnson, Dwayne, he is dealing with a toe injury, and he has been limited in practice, so helps explain some of that preseason usage. We'll see who ends up being the number 2 behind DeAndre Swift, but for right now, Roschon certainly a little bit banged up. So more goodness on the way with wide receivers and tight ends, but first, a quick word to our friends over at New Era. I freaking love our New Era hats. If you guys have been paying attention to Dwayne and I's draft streams, you've seen us rocking whoever we end up picking in the first couple rounds because, again, they are all fantastic. And yeah, overall, guys, what's up, fantasy football fanatics? There is a new era at FantasyLife. And what better way to elevate your game than with the official cap of NFL training camp from New Era? From the iconic snapbacks to the classic fitted caps, as the official cap of the NFL, New Era offers the widest selection of licensed NFL headwear, ensuring you look sharp whether you're in the stands or strategizing your next fantasy football move. With New Era's precision fit and innovative designs, every move you make is backed by unparalleled comfort and style. Discover your new level of style and show off your team pride with the all-new collection of New Era training camp caps. Click below to shop now and find your perfect fit for glory. Try out New Era. All right, Dwayne, we got some wide receiver news. Specifically, DeAndre Hopkins. Turns out the knee injury he suffered was actually an MCL tear. And while we did not have surgery, this was something that when he did have to have surgery in 2021, ended his season early, and God forbid it worsens, could end up being a 2 to 3 month recovery timetable. So limited in practice. Maybe he is out there on Sunday, but I'll tell you what, Dwayne, it's not the best news, to get before week 1.
Yeah, so, hat tip to Jesse Morris. He actually had this out there on Twitter. So Dr. Jesse Morse, he actually said when this injury happened, likely an MCL sprain, a grade 2 MCL sprain is a partial tear of the ligament and sometimes injury and of the meniscus as well. So we've had some good analysis about this, but now getting it confirmed, Ian, it just feels terrible because DeAndre Hopkins already had some of these issues that we've talked about. If you guys want to go check it out, I wrote why age matters for wide receivers and what are some of the indicators, right, of the fall off. Well, DeAndre Hopkins, not just age wise, he checked a lot of the boxes, and part of it is getting injured more often as you get older. And now we are starting the season with this MCL tear. So not ideal, man. I pretty much think that DeAndre Hopkins at this point, if I were drafting tomorrow, would be in a void. I don't want him anywhere near my fantasy lineups this weekend. I would have to be forced with a really tough decision. Even if we hear he's playing, I would have to be forced with a really tough decision to want to put DeAndre Hopkins in my lineup. Man, I do not trust it. In fact, if I'm the Titans, man, I hope they just let him rest a couple more games, Ian, and hopefully get this thing right. Returning too quickly could just be a massive blow, and we could end up seeing this guy get shut down for the season really quickly.
Right now, Dwayne and I have him ranked wide receiver 47 and 45, right there alongside guys like Jordan Addison, Rashid Shaheed, Khalil Shakur. Hardly anyone that you want to be jamming into fantasy lineups of all shapes and sizes. Mention his name, but yeah, Jordan Addison, Dwayne, also dealing with an ankle injury. That said, he says he feels 100% and he is planning to play. Good news with Jalen Naylor, their projected number 3 wide receiver, also dealing with an ankle injury and yet to get in a full practice this week. So I know Justin Jefferson, the world revolves around him. He's going to get all of his targets and everything, but Jordan Addison, Dwayne, pretty freaking good in his own right. And when we talk about Jefferson having a chance to ball out against that makeshift Giants cornerback room, should be giving a little bit of credit to Jordan Addison as well.
Yeah, we're keeping him a little bit lower because we're expecting a dip, even if he's out there, right? He's probably not going to be 100%, but it is very positive that he's at least been out there at practice, trending in the right direction. I will say with Jordan Addison, I've seen a lot of these comps here, recently, with people just not feeling like he's a very good player. And I'm like, man, you really got to go watch Jordan Addison play, guys. You need to go watch the film. This guy is a good player. He did just play with Justin Jefferson. So when you see things like, oh, he had an 18 or 17% target share, you have to keep in mind that you're playing across from one of the best wide receivers, maybe the best wide receiver in the NFL. He's going to get his looks. But when you just isolate down and you watch Jordan Addison, Ian, like this dude, man, like he's a good route runner. He has deep speed. He has double moves. He has yak ability. I have no doubt that this is a really good NFL football player and that he's eventually going to give us fantasy goodness. I just don't want to have him in my lineup in week one. You just mentioned the range he's in. He's right there in that same range with DeAndre Hopkins as a low end wide receiver 4. Really kind of a boom bust candidate. Does he end up coming up with one catch that gives you a touchdown? Well, to do that, like we really need that health, right? We want him to be at 100% to unlock that portion of his game. So I don't want to force Jordan Addison into any of my lineups if I don't have to in week one.
Other big wide receiver news, we have Jamar Chase, in fact, expected to play per NFL Network's Ian Rappaport. So again, back-to-back limited practices, easing him back in. But yeah, Jamar Chase going to be out there on Sunday, presumably, after all of that circus going on. Sadly, though, Dwain, T. Higgins added as limited with a hamstring injury on Thursday. So after practice, he said it feels good. It doesn't seem like a very high level of concern for Cincy. It sounded more like maintenance than anything, but dang it, Dwain, this is the guy who we have seen multiple times over the years be out there as almost a pure decoy. And let's face it, even if his hamstring feels good, it must not feel 100%. That's why he's on the injury report in the first case. So thoughts on, again, where maybe you're playing Chase, if you're willing to play him in every single league, and thoughts on Higgins maybe being downgraded now that we know his hamstring is in fact not at 100%.
Yeah, if Chase plays, you're starting him everywhere, no matter what. I mean, you'd have to be in like a 2-team league to not have Jamar Chase. Even then, you're going to really struggle to not have Jamar Chase in your starting lineup. So you're playing Chase. T. Higgins, though, we never like the mid to late week injury pop up, right, on the injury report. Like, we don't like that. So it doesn't always mean gloom and doom, guys. So we will have to pay attention to it and see what happens today with practice reports. And again, we'll be adjusting the ranks and the projections accordingly. But I did move him down a little bit, Ian. With the news that we know Jamar Chase is going to play, and now we've got the fact that we've got this injury with T. Higgins, not necessarily ideal. I will say Higgins is one of these guys, Ian, like I do feel like every year we have to talk about these sort of things. Like he never misses the whole season, but he misses portions of games. He misses, 2 or 3 games here or there, or he's trying to play through an injury. It's just kind of a pain that you've got to deal with. Like we deal with it with Deontay Johnson. Some of these guys they're talented players, but it's just part of like what we deal with when we have them. And I will say when T. Higgins has been ran out there in the past and we've been told he was okay, there have definitely been games, Ian, where he's just a decoy. And this coaching staff is very willing to do that. So you have to be really careful here. He could be getting coached on what to say. Like a player's not going to come out and say anyway, yeah, I feel terrible. It's going to be bad for me if I play, because then the defense knows, like they're told not to say those things. So you're gonna have to be real careful with T. Higgins this weekend. There's a chance he ends up being a decoy. Let's see what happens at practice today.
I'm looking at his injury history right now, man. In 2019, last year at Clemson, hamstring strain. In 2020, first year in the NFL, hamstring. 2021, he had an ankle injury. And then 22, 23, and now in 24, Dwain, another hamstring problem coming on. So you said it. It's not like they've taken him out for the entire season or anything like that. But, man, whatever Christian Watson was out there doing, T, go find that doctor as well, man. We want to see you out there on the football field. Again, guys, make sure you do try to check out the final injury reports on Friday. Things can happen. Players get downgraded, added, upgraded, again, all that stuff. But presumably the following wide receivers who have been practicing full for at least one day are going to play: Puka Nacua, Mike Williams, but on a snap count per head coach Robert Saleh. Curtis Samuel is good to go. Josh Palmer is good to go. Trey Palmer as well, but behind Jalen McMillan, obviously. Guys who we need to monitor a little bit more closely because they have not gotten in a full practice yet: Keenan Allen with a heel injury, Tyler Lockett with a thigh, Roman Wilson with an ankle, Malik Washington with a quad, and Juwan Jennings with an ankle. Not looking good because they haven't practiced all week. Colts wide receiver Josh Downs, Chargers wide receiver DJ Chark, and Saints wide receiver A.T. Perry added as a DMP on Thursday. So no, you're not starting most of those guys, but I know we got some D-gens out there, and you guys know how it goes with, again, trying to balance out some of those targets when we do have multiple parties suddenly missing from the lineup. And Dwain, as we get into tight end, Ian, I think that's, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, sorry, I didn't want to miss this part because I totally glossed it. Like when we talked about Hopkins, how far are you moving up Calvin Ridley if Hopkins doesn't play?
If he really doesn't play, I mean, I don't think he becomes this complete must-start guy, but when we start looking and, is he in that much of a different spot than Terry McLaurin or Amari Cooper, who are, wide receiver 28 for us? I don't think so.
Yeah, that's probably the right range. But I am going to move Calvin Ridley up regardless. Like I'm moving DeAndre Hopkins. Like I'm gonna cut his projections more with the confirmation of this news, because I didn't do it last night.
Stern but fair, Mr. McFarland. So again, quickly to go through some of the tight end issues. Kyle Pitts, as we've mentioned, dealing with the hamstring, but he did get up to a full practice on Thursday. And again, fully expecting him to play this weekend. If you happen to have Evan Ingram or Jake Ferguson, I get going to that length, but honestly, beyond that, I don't know about you, Dwayne, but I would not be putting Kyle Pitts on the bench for any sort of lesser option. Otherwise, though, Brock Bowers expecting to play. Noah Fant still limited, but you're probably not caring too much. I think the two interesting spots, Dwayne, are actually some of the injuries that could elevate other players in the offense, specifically Darnell Washington for the Steelers, added as a DMP on Thursday. Maybe Pat Freiermuth actually gets a full-time role. Lily's excited about that potential. And then Panthers, Ian Thomas and Tommy Tremble, back-to-back do-not practices. Jatavian Sanders and Jordan Matthews are the next man up. So thoughts on any of those?
Yeah, Jatavian Sanders is a guy that I moved up in the ranks yesterday. It's really trending towards, Isaiah or Ian Thomas, and as well as Tommy Tremble not playing this weekend. Like they were both DMPs yesterday. So, I mean, we'll see if they get out a limited practice today. Not really ideal. If they get in somehow get a full, maybe we'll think differently. But yeah, this is a huge spot for Jatavian Sanders. Not somebody you're going to want to put in your fantasy lineup, unless you're in a sicko league, Ian. Then maybe you could be staring down Jatavian Sanders like in a flex spot or something. But as far as the rest of these injuries, no, I don't think there's anything here that just causes us to move someone into a position where we're like, oh my God, they're must start. It would be good for Freiermuth to not have Darnell Washington. Maybe we could get a 70% route participation. That would move him into the high end tight end 2 conversation.
If Tucker Kraft is out tonight, questionable with the back, Luke Musgrave right there with Dalton Schultz probably.
Yeah, I would put him below Schultz, but there. Yes, I agree.
Good stuff there, and good stuff with our friends over at DraftKings. Hey everyone, with the football season kicking off, it is the perfect time to dive into the action with our partners at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. And right now, all new customers who bet $5 will instantly get $250 in bonus bets, plus get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us. That's something we can all celebrate. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today and sign up using our promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. And stay in on the action and use your $250 in bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings. DraftKings is the place to bet touchdowns. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Again, new customers use our promo code FANTASYLIFE and bet just $5 on any wager to get $250 back in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Only other, notable injuries, I would say, Dwayne, Jalen Ramsey missing practice all week with a hamstring. Patriots offensive line is banged up, and if there's one O-line in the league that can't really afford that, it probably resides in New England. Browns will also be without stud left tackle Jedrick Wills for at least this first week as he recovers from a knee injury. And because I am helping Mrs. Hartitz with her fantasy roster, it did come to my attention that Colts kicker Matt Gay is not practicing with a hernia injury, so had to do a little bit of maneuvering on the waiver wire there, Dwayne. I hate freaking leagues with kickers, but sometimes you got to do those husband duties in the household. So finally, again, it is time for some bold predictions ahead of what should hopefully be an eventful week 1 weekend. So Dwayne, going to start things off with you and a certain wide receiver who, looks like he might be ready to go absolutely nuclear on that sorry Washington Commanders secondary.
Yeah, Mike Evans. I'm predicting this, Ian. All right, we're gonna go 7 catches. I have to be super bold because you make me, for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. But it's so feasible. Like, this dude totally eats against man coverage. We've got Dan Quinn running this defense. He had a man-heavy approach last year. Dan, I would probably use more zone. I'm just saying. I looked at your secondary. We got Michael Davis, ranks 103 out of 126 in PFF coverage grade last year. Benjamin St. Juice, 95th out of 126. You do have Mike Sanra still. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. He's your rookie round 2 pick playing nickel, so maybe he gives you a little bit of hope. But man, like, Mike Evans is going to eat no matter where he lines up on the field. And again, he is the guy Baker's going to look to anytime he gets man coverage. And against this group, man, he's going to go absolute beast mode. I have him as my wide receiver 6 in the rankings right now. I have him inside my top 20 players. I would start this man in a half PPR over Travis Etienne. Like that's saying a lot. Like that's how high I am on Mike Evans this weekend, because I do think a box score like this could be coming. So 7 catches, 130, 2 touchdowns, Hartitz.
And we were joking around, Dwain, about not even benching Jamar Chase in a 2-team league. Well, if you happen to have, 3 Mike Evans on that squad, you might actually be doing just that. So I like the call. Last year, only Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb have more games with at least 25 PPR points than Mike Evans. Certainly, not a stranger to having some boom performances, and it looks good this week. Dwain, I'm going to go ahead and steal one of your guys for the season and say that he is going off in week 1. That's right. Seahawks running back Kenny Walker, 125 plus total yards, and not 1 but 2 touchdowns out there. So I know he's someone that you've been loving all offseason, Dwain, and against this Broncos defense, allowed the 3rd most runs of 20 plus yards last season. So I think we can get a house call, and as I'm predicting, maybe even 2 for Kenny Walker this weekend.
Yeah, I love the call on Kenny Walker. So I'm going to say running back for my next player here, Ian. I already talked about him yesterday, so I'm going to go pretty quick here and toss it over to you for your last one. But it's Joe Mixon for the Texans. Like, we've got a lot of points that are going to be scored in this game. He's going to be the primary ball carrier in week 1. Could age and efficiency maybe catch up with him later in the year? Like, I suppose that could happen, but I'm not worried about it in week 1. So I'm going to say Joe Mixon goes off for 110 yards and a touchdown. Not as spicy as Mike Evans, but again, guys, go check the ranks. This is a player I have way higher than where we were drafting him in season-long formats.
Would have liked to see 2 touchdowns on that bull call, Dwain, but that's okay. You still did.
I know, but I did 2 for Evans. Okay.
I'm also going down to 1 touchdown for my last guy. That's right. Jameson Williams on Sunday Night Football. Give me 130 yards and a score against a Rams defense that last year was already 19th in scoring with this generation's single best defensive player in Aaron Donald. So you take him away, and I really do think we could be seeing some fantasy-friendly shootouts early on in the year. And yeah, shout out to JMO. His first professional September game is happening on Sunday night. Let's see what happens when the former number 12 overall pick isn't dealing with a hamstring injury or coming back from a gambling suspension. It's an offense we love. It's an offense that, yes, we do have Sun God and Sam Laporta ranked ahead, but man, whenever Jared Goff is indoors, we are feeling good about that upside, just like I am with Jameson Williams this Sunday evening. So, Dwain, we've made it. The weekend's here. Let's freaking go, man. Football is in the air, and we could not be more excited to share that enjoyment with all you over here at Fantasy Life. So make sure you check out our updated rankings over on fantasylife.com, our start sit tool, all that goodness. And yeah, otherwise, good luck, build those fantasy rosters right, and just, have a great weekend overall. So for Dwain, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning to the Fantasy Life show. And until next time, take care, everybody.